Everybody, John with ITAP here again. We're talking about some beer today. Today the focus is going to be on the ever popular and the beer style that seems to be going nowhere anytime soon, which is the hazy IPA, also known as Northeast IPA or New England IPA, or I'm sure there's any other iterations of names for this beer. But the main distinguishing factor of this beer is going to be the appearance of it, which is, sort of this hazy color versus this sort of brilliant, clear looking beer that we're used to drinking. The example I'm using today is a wonderful beer made right here in St. Louis. It is the second shipped Little Big Hop. They call it a New England style session IPA. This one only clocks in just under 5% alcohol. So very easy to drink. Very easy to drink is going to be another thing that's very common to hazy IPAs. So what makes a hazy IPA a hazy IPA? There are all sorts of things that go into it. So you notice the appearance there. Like I said, it's a little hazier than normally you're used to with most beer styles, outside of maybe like a Hefeweizen or something like that. Well, the first things about a hazy IPA is usually, we're using barley is the most common grain you're going to see in beers, outside of maybe a wheat beer or like an oatmeal stout or something like that. So most of the malt in a hazy IPA is going to be barley as usual, because you need those sugars from that barley or from that barley malt to ferment to make your beer. But a lot of times in a hazy IPA, you'll see additions of things like wheat or things like oatmeal. These are grains with larger proteins that are more likely to stay suspended in the beer and give it a sort of haze. I think like Hefeweizen again, cloudy Hefeweizen. But also a big part of the haziness of the beer is the aggressive late hop addition. Beers like this are generally heavily dry hopped, and a lot of those hops sort of stay in suspension and also kind of contribute to that haziness and that big full mouthful of hops that you sort of get whenever you drink one. But the beauty of this also is, while it is a very hoppy beer, it's not like those IPAs that we remember that think 10 or so years ago, when a lot of us first started really drinking IPAs, and they were very bitter, and there's a very aggressive bitterness. A lot of them are very good, but it almost got to the point where it was so bitter. I personally got burnt out on them. About 5 or 6 years ago, I just couldn't drink any more hops. And then the hazy IPA came along, and what I think is the most important distinguishing feature of this beer, other than the fact that it's hazy, is how those hops are used. I said that it's generally a late hop addition. So think about this: when hops are normally added to a beer, they're normally added at the beginning of a boil, which usually lasts about 60 minutes. So you're after you cook your grains and you get your wort, which is essentially like a sugar water, you throw it into your boil kettle, where you start boiling the liquid, and then you're adding your hops for bitterness. The longer the hops are in there, the more bitterness that is going to be sort of extracted from those hops. What you want in hops is you want the oil out of those hops to create bitterness, and you can't get the bitterness out of that oil, break it down to get the bitterness, unless you boil it. And we started noticing the less contact time those hops have with that boiling liquid, the less bitterness you get, but the more flavor and the more aroma that you get. And then we started, noticing, okay, well, what if the water's not even boiling at all, and we'll throw the hops in the beers in the fermenter. So when the beer's, around in the 60, 70 degree range, and you start imparting a lot of flavor and a lot of aroma into the beer, and almost minimal to no bitterness, you get this just huge juicy notes. Orange juice is a big thing that you get, instead of citrus rind, getting like actual citrus juice. Almost a sweet characteristic. It's almost fun to describe it like a mimosa to somebody. And I love it because there's so many people that are getting introduced to craft beer, and they have their first IPA, and it's just a really aggressive bitter beer, and then they drink things like a Blue Moon or an ABY Rascal or a Boulevard Wheat or a Hefeweizen, and you say, well, here, try this. And you go, what's that? You go, well, this is an IPA. And they go, well, I hate IPAs, they're too bitter. And I go, well, no, try this. Okay, it kind of looks the same when they drink it, and they go, "That's really good. It must not be very hoppy. It's not very bitter." And you go, "No, there are tons of hops in this beer. It's a lot of hops are going to be added um, in the fermenter to dry hop this thing appropriately, but you're not getting that bitterness. You're imparting a fruitiness onto it, which is much more approachable to the average person. And someone like me who got sort of burnt out on aggressively bitter beers a while ago, I can drink a couple of these and not get that headache I used to get. Some people get when beers are too bitter. So that's why I love this as a sort of gateway beer to introduce people to hops and say, hey, it doesn't have to be this really aggressive, unapproachable style anymore. And I think that's why the style has become so successful, not just necessarily a fad like a lot of us thought it was going to be 5, 6 years ago. But yeah, now they're flying off the shelf at all of our stores. They're among the best-selling beers that we carry, and almost every brewery is making one now. So yeah, if you get a chance, we carry this almost every ITAP, I believe, right now, and it's a wonderful beer and very easy to drink. Tons of flavor, but not aggressively bitter. Um, Only 4.8% alcohol, so you can have plenty of it as well. So cheers, grab a hazy IPA, and I'll see you in the next one.